Alright guys, so in this video we're checking out the Eachine LAL3. I've had this for a while, I've had some issues and I'll explain that here in a bit, but let me just talk about the specs first. Everyone wants to know what the specs are. So it's a 3-inch micro, it's got 1408 motors, 3750 kV, 4-in-1, 32-bit BLHeli 32 ESC, 25 amps bursting to 30 amps, F4 flight controller. I think it's a Maytech F411 based flight controller with an MPU 6000 Betaflight OSD. Pretty standard stuff there, and a pretty generic 25 to 300 milliwatt power switchable video transmitter. Obviously this is analog, not digital. This does come with the Caddx baby turtle here, and this is actually the Whip edition in the back. So at first, if you look at the pictures and stuff on the product page, it looks like it's just maybe the 20x20 board, but it's actually the 25x25 millimeter board. And you can see here in the frame 20x20 holes there and the 25x25 holes on the outside. So this is actually the Whip edition, which is actually the better camera out of if you look at the baby turtle 20x20 versus the baby turtle Whip. The baby turtle Whip is actually slightly better. It's got a little bit, it's got 5 megapixel sensor versus a 2 megapixel sensor. I've explained that in previous videos, but in case you didn't know, this is the better version of the baby turtle. In the back you've got I think it's a Lollipop 3, Lollipop 3 circular polarized antenna. Does not come with the receiver, it's plug and play, so I added a XM plus receiver there. Pretty standard. Comes with a plug that is right back there, kind of hard to see, and you just cut the other end off, which is the servo lead, and then solder the wires to your receivers, basically 5 volts ground and signal, and then I just routed the antennas out the back here, so it's fine. It gets out of the way of the props. So they have this as a setup as a 4S, so it's a 1408 motor, 3750 kV, and I flew it with a 4S 450 battery. It's supposed to be top mounted like so. Suppose you might be able to do a bottom mount if you prefer that, but I don't think it's not designed for that, because the way you can see these little skids here on the bottom, it's designed to scrape on the ground without hitting any components, so it is meant for a top mounted battery. Now it's interesting that it comes with an HD camera for 1080 video, but you get props in view, which is I don't know, to me, if you're gonna go HD, get the props out of view. Otherwise just stick with a regular analog camera and just, you know, make it like a racer or something, or put some sort of a mount here for a GoPro or some other, you know, 4K camera and get video that way. But yeah, it's kind of in an odd spot. It's just not really a racer's. I guess it's kind of a freestyler, but you're gonna get props in view, so not really my that wouldn't be my first choice in terms of the frame. And then you're kind of limited in terms of battery size here up on top and space. You probably don't want to go anything bigger than a 4S 350 anyway. This really has enough power to carry a bigger battery, so if you want to go to a 550 or 650, it'll have no problem. It'll probably run a little bit heavier, and the motors will run a little bit hotter. They ran fairly hot on the PID tune on 4S on the 450, so as you increase the weight, the motors are probably going to get even warmer. And the PID tune on here is a generic Eachine PID tune. I don't think anyone actually flew it. This is pretty common with a lot of Eachine products. They don't fly, they just put the parts together. I mean, the parts individually are not bad. You know, on paper they all seem pretty decent, but then when you put them together collectively and then you just slap on a generic tune and actually don't fly it, in the end it doesn't fly so great. So that's really the problem that I was having with this one. A lot of vibrations, a lot of jello in the video. I did try to make some PID tuning changes, but I have a defective flight controller here on this one, and it's was really not letting me get the best performance out of this, because what was happening is at the end of every flight, after the voltage went below, I think about 3.3 volts, if I landed and then I unplugged the battery, all of my settings in the flight controller would disappear, and then I would have to go back home and go back and get the CLI dump and re-flash the firmware and put on my settings again into the flight controller. And I don't know what is causing that. I think that this is a kind of a new problem with a lot of these recent flight controllers. I think that the Happy Model Mobula 6 had that problem. I didn't personally have that problem on that one, on my Mobula 6, but I know a lot of people did. And I'm sure that other people had that problem. When the voltage gets too low, for some reason the board resets and you lose all of your settings, like the NVRAM gets wiped. And so that's really annoying because, you know, if the voltage goes to below a certain point and your settings are wiped, your flights are really short. So I wasn't really getting out really maximum flight time, and I was getting like one flight here and there, and I really can't do anything with this because the flight controller keeps erasing my settings. So this model does have some potential. It has got some decent parts. It just needs a better PID tune. If someone needs to tune it, and someone needs to put like probably upgrade the firmware, put RPM filter, all that on there. But because my flight controller is not working so great, it's not going to happen, and I'm not going to be making a future video on this one either. So may ask being good to send me replacement flight controller if there's enough requests down in the comments below, but otherwise I would not expect another video on this model anytime soon. Now, if you do get this model and obviously have a flight controller that's working, then you'll have the opportunity to make some changes. Maybe put EMU flight on here, or RPM filter with Betaflight 4.2. But I think the first thing you want to do is change these props. These Racer Star 3040 props are not so good. I think they're unbalanced. I think that's why they get a lot of vibrations and causes the motors to heat up. They get very, very hot. So I would recommend just throwing these in the trash and getting something like a GemFan 4032 or 4023, something maybe a little lower pitch, for example. It's not super high kV motor. I mean, it's not like 4100 kV, but you know, on this pitch tune, you probably want to go to a lower pitch prop and you get a little bit less vibrations. So in the end, I'm not exactly sure who this model is for. I mean, if you're looking to get HD video, you can get the props in the view. If you're looking for a racer, usually you want to carry the battery in the bottom. If you're looking for a freestyle drone, just for freestyle, maybe just get some HD video. If you don't mind getting the props in view, then maybe this might be for you. It kind of depends. The video reception isn't so great because the antenna is kind of buried low here, close to the carbon plate. So analog video isn't so great. If you're in a sketchy area with a lot of multipath interference, this is not a good spot for the antenna. It should be sticking out more. In terms of the frame, I'm not a big fan of the frame either. You can see here the bottom plate is a unibody, and I think it's 3 millimeters thick, but you know, in a hard crash, you're just going to snap this arm off and then you're going to have to replace the whole bottom plate. So there are spare parts available if you happen to get this model and you want to replace spare parts. I'll link those down in the description as well. But yeah, I think they did that to save weight. I mean, the frame itself is not like weak. It doesn't really flex that much. So they are using some pretty decent carbon, but you know, again, it doesn't look like the cut's super nice. It does look like it's cut at an angle, which explains why the arms are kind of strong. Okay, so this is how much it weighs, 176.5 grams, and then with the battery I flew with, we're coming at 232.5. So in this configuration here, with the battery and everything, all up weight's going to be under the 250 gram limit. Anyway, I'll go ahead and show you the flight demo with my narration. I'll obviously showed you some footage here in the first part of this video. If you guys have any questions about this model, if you happen to get it, if you have problems with it, let me know, and maybe I'll try and help you out with that. But I'm pretty much going to be done with this model. You're not going to be seeing any more videos on this one anytime soon. Alright, so it's flying a lot better now. I switched it over to EMU flight. Yeah, it's a lot smoother. Hopefully the settings won't get lost. Oh, it's windy. Ooh, it's windy. But this thing seems to be fine, handling it okay. So I just picked one of the, I think it was a 4S 3-inch Cinewhoop PIDs in EMU flights, one of the presets, I think. Obviously it's still a work in progress, but not bad. Much better than the factory Betaflight tune that was on here before. A little bit of prop wash. Yeah, I highly recommend going to Emu Flight. Seems like if you're having problems on Betaflight 4, the next step, after you've tried RPM filter and tweaking and all that, and you've given up, or to the point of giving up, then try Emu Flight. It seems to be getting better and better all the time. Let me know if you guys want a tutorial on how to flash Emu Flights. Pretty much the same as Betaflight. Yeah, it's pretty smooth. Nice power loops, even in wind. So I'm gonna end this flight here a little early because I don't want to lose my settings. If the battery goes too low, I think the settings are lost. So pretty much not bad on the 450 4S. Yeah, battery's going low. Time to land.